Had a neighbor that died and they were having an estate sale, so found this in pretty rough shape. And whoever tried to sharpen it last left a bunch of just horrible grind marks. It looks like somebody actually took like a belt grinder, not a belt grinder, but a wheel to it, and just messed it up. So this Shigemitsu from Japan. I saw some various information online, but nothing too definitive. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean it up and return to its former glory. Maybe just add it to our collection. Of course, why would I finish all the other projects that I have when I can just do this? Come on. Too easy. On all seriousness, though, when you're dealing with things that are like relatively expensive, right? These $100 like vintage knives, you want to do as minimal work to them as possible. We're not reprofiling, we're not doing anything. What we're doing is we're going to take a lot of this surface ugly finish off with a buffing wheel, and then we're going to sharpen it and make sure that we reestablish our flats, probably glue this down and polish it, and then send it our way. Ooh, just bent it right here. Oops. So we see some pretty heavy rust deposits right here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some wet or dry 1000 grit, and we're gonna just give it a little scrubby scrub. Make sure that all these spots come off before we continue buffing, so we just don't waste compound and we just don't waste time. Another really good tip is that if you have one of these buffing wheels, make sure you rotate them once in a while, because it gets used to spinning one way, so you can get a little bit more of a life out of them, and it's easier to clean when they're going that way. See all the caked on compound that we have right here. So whenever we turn it on, all that compound is going to be coming off to a piece of waste wood or something like that we're grinding on it, and easy day. Okay, so one thing that I noticed right away with this knife is that it's differentially tempered. That means that a portion of the blade has a different hardness than the spine, right? Not only can we also infer this by some of the lines that we already seen, but what we can do is give it a little vinegar bath, and when we do, it'll expose like what you call a hamon. And one of the ways that I just found was that I was trying to sand some of these like very heavy like grinder marks, and the spine is much softer. Not only that, but it might also just be like laminated steel. So one part of it is like a softer steel, while the other part, the cutting edge, will be a harder one. And that might be it, because it does share some weird aspects of that. But I do want to get all these ugly little lines off. You might be wondering, hey, so why don't you just do it in a flat plane or something like that? Well, you can't really particularly tell. Let me see if I can show you. There's a very slight curve on this. That means that this was made on a very big wheel. Think like a gigantic 40-inch wheel out of clay or whetstone, where that was actually sharpened, so it can got that particular slight curvature right here. So that would do nothing other than provide a line right here and right here, which would be good for sharpening. But aside from that, we can't get those heavy spots. That's where we're using a 400 grit piece of sandpaper. Okay, so man, I look like a plant. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, why do I mirror polish first? Now, this one's pretty smart. Whenever you mirror polish, you can see all the other defects, right? So, and it doesn't take me long. It took me 3 minutes in the buffer. Now we can see everything we need to correct, and we have identified that indeed on one side we are completely flat, and we need to fix that. And on this side, we have a very established bevel, and somebody slapped it with a secondary ugly bevel. You can see how it's darker, which we need to correct, which will be much easier now that we know exactly where it is. I hit this with 320 to get rid of some of these buffing scars that somebody did with a grinder, but I think at the end of the day I'm going to keep them, because it would just be way too much to remove all these particular marks. and I'm just not gonna eat away at the knife like that. What I am going to do is hit it with a very, very light grit belt, or do it by hand. I think doing it by hand might be more effective, but it's already pretty sharp on its own. But I am not a fan of having. Hold on. You see how that's secondary bevel? So we have flat bevel, and then it goes back down again. That right there, I'm not a fan of having that ugly serration. You know, it's just not it. Will it sharpen? Of course, but anything with a single bevel will sharpen. I want it to be nice and pretty for what we're gonna use it for. And I'm gonna give you an extra tip, right? I got a bunch of these belts, and some of them are on brand, some of them are there. If you're curious at what the finish on the belt will look like, just take a little bit of the belt. Oh, we don't like that scratch? That's not the belt we're going to be using. What I'm actually going to be using to reprofile will be this. Not sure the name of the material, but it says deer foss. This feels exactly like stuff that you would lap crankshafts with, which we in the military call shark skin. Very, very not abrasive at all. And whenever we rub it, it's similar to the finish we already have. That's how we know we're going to use this. One thing that I feel like I need to explain is the fact that these knives are essentially flat or slightly concave on one side, because the wheel that they were made off. Imagine a giant wheel that sharpens like that. And on the other side, it has a bevel. What does that mean? That means that to deburr after you hit it with a belt, you need to actually lay it flat and do one of these with the equivalent grit. So just keep in mind when you're doing that on one flat edge knives or single bevel knives. Or I've also seen these to be single bevel, but on the other side, like here, maybe a quarter inch or so, have a very pronounced other bevel. So that makes them dual bevel, but one would be, let's say, a 15 to 20, and the other one would be a 45 on one side, or half each of what that would be. So that's what I will be doing. I also got new compounds, so usually I always use green and white, but I got pink this time. Obviously, in the green and white, I know what works, right? Green and the beige. It's not beige, it's white. It just looks a little beige. So I know what these two do. I've actually just never seen pink, so it gave some basic information. So I'm going to try it out and see what it does at least. Thus far, this is it. Very sharp. Obviously some things need to be buffed out still. This right here, I decided to give it a little hammered finish because it was already dinged up and scratched up to the point where it would never go back to a normal without taking a significant amount of material. So I'm going to keep going at it a little bit more because I like the way that it looks. It's like a nice hammer finish, and then keep on going. Okay, update. Pink is, I guess, a little bit the step right after green, so it does leave a smooth finish, but not quite as aggressive as green. Cool, I guess, but it seems to be a waste of money in my opinion, because I can just jump from green to white and then be done. But I mean, cool little sidestep if you're really trying to polish something up like brass, but definitely not for steel, in my opinion. I got a nice little satin finish on this, so it was a little dirty, needs to be cleaned up. But I don't like to do mirror polish on kitchen knives because then it's hard to upkeep. Any little scratch can be seen. I'm about to buff it out a little bit on this leather belt, but you can see that it has a nice reflective finish, and all the small, the defects and the personality of the knife are still there. And I actually kind of like this hammered finish. So everybody's like, well, I don't like it. I'm like, well, it's my knife, so I like it. And then I'm going to polish this up and keep the bulk of that brand. And then it's ready for the kitchen. Said literally nobody ever. I ended up mirror polishing it with a leather belt. I'm going to lightly sand this because I want to keep the insignia. And then I'm going to clear coat it. Hey, what are you doing? Sorry, the pig is hungry. That's what she acts. Funnily enough, after a light clear coat, you can see there's a gigantic crack like down the middle. But you know what though? Maybe that'll be a future video. Who knows? It's been hot, so I actually postponed this a little bit. I finally got white compound because, fun fact, the different colors on the compounds mean different things, as I stated earlier. And I was sold the white one, or the beige one, as white, and it doesn't mirror polish nowhere near as effectively as the white one. So there's that. And here, let me wet my new brick, but this is pretty much it so far. And I clear the handle. Sorry, my tripod is inside, but here is very nice and pretty, and this is a little voucher that came with. Pretty good. Very good. Excellent. Pretty nice. Let me show you closer.